I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. Today we're going to welcome to the podcast Anthony Blattner. Anthony is the founder of Modern Media, a top LinkedIn advertising agency. As a previous tech founder and ex-IBMer, try not to trip me up always. Anthony has seen a lot of companies have explosive growth with good technology and good marketing, while others, even though they had a great product or service, fail without effective marketing. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
It's good to see you again. I was like, when did we talk?
A few weeks ago, a couple months ago.
So what was your first job?
First job was a newspaper delivery boy when I was 11 years old.
Did your mom drive you around or did you bike?
No, I had a scooter.
Oh.
A little scooter, a little Razor scooter that I cruised around the neighborhood, whipping newspapers on the lawns.
That's hilarious. And you grew up in New York, right?
Buffalo, New York, Western New York area.
That's cold.
That is cold, yes. That's why I live in Texas now. Even though I complain about the heat a little bit down here, I still prefer the heat to 5 feet of snow and single-digit temperatures for sure.
Yeah, and I think we get the kind of the best of both worlds here in Colorado. Like we can get 100 degrees, but we also get like really good. Like I'm all about spring and fall, so I'm all about those kind of weather parts. But
yeah, you guys get the good snowboarding snow. So and you
apparently.
So Buffalo's got a couple tiny little hills for some snowboarding, so I've done that. But I actually have not been to Colorado for snowboarding. I've been a lot of other places for snowboarding, but not Colorado yet. So it's on the to-do list.
Well, since you're coming from Texas, you have to go to Crested Butte because that's where everybody goes from Texas. They go to Crested Butte.
That's a Texas spot.
Apparently. We were actually just there. We did. We just got a little Airbnb because I was like, my husband was like, well, we got to get out of town. Like we were going to go to Florida this year. Obviously, that's not happening. So we just got an Airbnb 5 nights in Crested Butte, which I don't honestly think I've ever been there. Like I'm not a mountain person. I'm a beach person. So if I'm spending money or time, generally we're going somewhere beachy.
Yeah.
But it was gorgeous, but it was like all Texas plates.
But you know, there's definitely a lot of back and forth where I've had like several friends from Austin here move to Colorado in the last few years. And then I know a lot of people from Colorado who live here now. So I'd say similar from what I can grasp, similar culture. Both
yes.
Different,
yeah. I mean, Austin's kind of like the Boulder
of
Texas. So it might be kind of similar to Colorado. So give us the rundown on your career journey.
Career journey. So I started my career in the software development world. Originally moved to Austin to work for IBM, and I was in their e-commerce division where we would go out to these big brands and build e-commerce stores and do all this web development. So right out of college, I got to see like the really big scale of how all this worked. Did a lot of traveling, learned a lot. Actually pretty, enjoyed it, learned a lot from it, but also quickly found out that being in Austin, I got involved in the startup and tech communities here and just really enjoyed that. So got to see the really big scale at IBM and how all that worked, and then got involved in the startup scene around here in Austin. And while I was doing e-commerce development at IBM, I was doing mobile app development on the side. So building these little iPhone and Android apps. And then that started to take off on the side. So eventually I started my own mobile app development agency here in Austin, and then built that and got to work on a lot of really cool projects with a lot of great local and not local companies. And that's really where that was kind of like my first segue into the marketing world, was doing number one marketing at my software agency. And then also as we were building these apps, a startup or a company would build their app and then need help with marketing with it afterwards. And especially in the startup world, they plan to build the app and you work on the app and then suddenly you launch it and they're like, okay, what's next? Marketing. So naturally got pulled into helping out a lot of startups and just various companies with their marketing after we would build the app, and seeing some companies do very well. They would build their app and they would launch and they might get millions of downloads. Several of our clients got acquired, or there's ones that I know that have 100 or more employees in Austin now. So we've seen a lot of companies do really well with it, but then also at the same time, seeing a lot of companies, we would build just as good of an app for them and they would launch it. And then without a good marketing plan after that, it would just sit in the app store and no one would download it. So seeing the need for that, I worked on that software agency for several years and then sold that a few years ago, and I always knew I wanted to get more in the marketing space afterwards. So as I was like thinking about what do I want to do next, marketing was always like the most fun thing to me. And like I played around with Facebook ads and stuff here and there and worked on different things. So got into the marketing world and started this marketing agency. And in the beginning, wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to focus on, but just kind of knew that tech space, maybe startups or tech companies was what I was always really excited about. That's always what I was in. Kind of started in that field. So as I got into the marketing world, I did some SEO, I did some Facebook ads, some Google ads, but I always just ended up finding that LinkedIn was the best channel for all the work I was doing because it was mostly tech-based, it was mostly B2B stuff that we were doing. So then over the years, ended up just seeing LinkedIn was the best performer. So then since in the last few years, we've been solely a LinkedIn marketing agency and specializing in LinkedIn ads. That's been our bread and butter. So running a lot of advertising campaigns and still mostly in the B2B tech space.
That's awesome. Any apps we would know?
Apps that you would know. We built an app for Texas A&M. It was like a student app in regards to their football team. If you went to A&M, maybe you would see that.
Nope.
There was a period of time in Austin here when Uber and Lyft left regulations. So we helped build the replacement app for that. It was called Ride Austin, and it was the top ride sharing app in Austin for a long time.
That's cool.
Those companies have since returned. So Ride Austin, I think is just operating on a very minimal basis. I'm not actually sure right now, especially during stuff, what's going on with it, but that one, and then another company called Ride Scout, which eventually got acquired by Car2Go, which is owned by the Daimler companies.
I've heard of Car2Go.
So some fun apps.
I was like, is it 2 dots? It's like my current obsession. I'm all about the game apps. So let's talk about B2B and how that's different than B2C, because a lot of us get a lot of B2C, and I think that people don't really differentiate B2B and B2B from B2C. So can you talk about what the difference is?
Yeah. So B2B is business to business, and that's when so the differences between B2C and B2B is typically in B2C you have a very big target audience out there, where you might be using some mainstream media, you might be using radio, TV, you can advertise to a big audience on Facebook, and you're likely to have a lot of customers out there who are potential customers for what you're. B2B is a much more niche and targeted space. So the way we approach campaigns is usually, who is the very specific decision maker that we want to target. So we'll talk to our clients and be like, what industry are you looking to target? What company size? What is the job titles of the people that you want to get in front of? And, in B2B, it's usually these companies have a very specific decision maker that they're looking to sell to. They're building a very specific app or software or something that's going to serve maybe like HR managers at tech companies, or it could be, what's another good example? There's a video marketing service for lawyers that we're doing, the marketing for the video marketing service. So, looking to target just lawyers, and these like very specific B2B segments, that's when you can't really use mainstream media, because finding the person that you're looking to target in the mainstream media is like finding a needle in the haystack. So if you run a Facebook campaign or a radio campaign, you're going to spend a lot of money, and the likelihood of you reaching somebody who's actually a prospect is very low. Sure, you could, if you spend enough, you could reach them, but you're probably going to waste a lot as far as like, your ROI is going to be much lower. So when we do B2B, we're much more specific and targeted on it, and we're also much more direct in the messaging, because knowing that we can target these people, we can be very clear and direct on what it is that we're offering and how we can help them.
So what did I even write here? What does this even say? Oh, so you kind of talked about this, but what are some of the most effective ways to get in front of those businesses? So, like, even if you're like, I know I want, like you said, HR managers in tech companies in a 10-mile radius. Like, what is the easiest way to get in front of those people? Just marketing, period.
Yeah, just purely easiest way is LinkedIn these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you sign up for Sales Navigator or use their advertising platform, you can get those exact targeting options where you can type in a specific job title, type in a specific location, and target that specific area.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn's the easiest way to do it. Other than LinkedIn, then you're probably going to buy a list or have somebody build you a list of these people. Lots of data companies out there that will do that. Lots of tools out there that will help you look up some contact info. But easiest way, yeah, is like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or their ad platform.
So you focus on LinkedIn, and you kind of talked about why, but tell me why LinkedIn? And we've had a couple of people on before, but LinkedIn is so different
Mm-hmm.
than any other platform, and it's been growing like crazy the last few years. So let's talk about why LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and how it's different.
Yeah. So why LinkedIn is kind of the two sides is number one, we were seeing LinkedIn was getting the best performance for a lot of these B2B companies we were working with. And to be honest, we still do a very little bit of Facebook advertising in what we do. But for what we do, we usually build lead generation campaigns and funnels for our clients. So this is usually when you have a B2B company, you have a B2B product or service you're looking to promote, you want to get other potential prospects into your funnel, signing up for something, starting that conversation. So that's what we build for people. So using LinkedIn, we have those targeting options to be able to target people by title, by company. Whereas like on other platforms, those options just don't really exist out there. Like some people put their Facebook title and company on there, but for the most part, Facebook's usually friends and family, so you're not putting as much professional stuff out there. They don't have much info about you. And I'll always remember the one campaign that kind of stood out for me the most. This company was a big data platform where if you were a tech company and you had lots of emails, lots of contacts, maybe you were collecting a lot of info about people, either in your marketing or in the app itself. Data analytics is a huge thing. So, most people out there, this was a big enterprise, solution. So most people out there didn't have the budget to spend to be a prospect for this company, and they were doing the traditional Facebook and Google advertising. And when we brought them on, we saw that on Google, they were doing, they were following best practices for keywords and stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that were signing up through Google were maybe looking for jobs, and they would end up there, but they weren't real prospective customers. And right. Then on Facebook, they were running Facebook ads, but most people that were clicking on the ad, they were just clicking on it because they thought it was like a cute picture or like it was flashy, it grabbed their attention, but right. None of them were really prospective customers. And like you see this all the time in Facebook ads and stuff like that, where their sales team was getting all these leads and stuff, but none of them were really qualified to buy. So as soon as we created their campaign, we targeted larger tech companies. We targeted specifically the data science titles at those companies, and right out of the gates, just seeing those titles start to sign up for your campaign coming in, they're just like, these are the perfect leads, and they were just night and day from the other channels they were using to now being able to target that actual title, who you want to target, and getting those leads signing up and coming in. So that's why we use LinkedIn, because it has the options out there that we need. And then how it's different from other platforms, a few different things. So I'll compare it to Facebook a lot, where on Facebook, if you ever run Facebook ads, usually give it a big audience, and you let the AI algorithm go find who are those people most likely to buy within that audience. And like Facebook usually relies on a lot of social indicators of like, I've been to these different e-commerce sites and I've bought in these different things, so I'm likely a candidate to buy this. Mm-hmm. But, the way LinkedIn works is we are actually very specific on who we want to target. So we don't give it a big audience, but we give it a very narrow audience. It's usually like, here's the couple job titles, here's the one or two industries we want to target, and here's the very specific company size that we want to go after. So we are very specific on who we want to target, and then also in our messaging and then the ads themselves, we're very direct in what that is. Mm-hmm. Whereas on Facebook, you're usually so on the way that these work from a cost perspective. On Facebook, you're usually paying for every impression. So you're paying whether someone clicks or not. On LinkedIn, you're usually paying per click. So on Facebook, you want to try to draw in as many clicks as possible because you're paying for that impression, whether somebody clicks or not.
Mm-hmm.
On LinkedIn, you're only paying when somebody clicks. So we want to be very clear and direct in the messaging so that we don't have any unintentional clicks. We don't want somebody clicking on the ad if they don't really know what we're advertising and who we're speaking to. So we often call out who's that person. Hey, HR managers, da da da.
Mm-hmm.
Click here to download the new guide for 2020 HR during these interesting times, something like that. So we're usually very clear and direct in the messaging, and then that's usually so. Most people that we talk to or bring on, they might have run Facebook ads in the past. So we usually see, this is how they did the targeting before. These are the ads they were running. And we're usually flipping that upside down when we bring it to LinkedIn.
I like it. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who Googled Peloton yesterday, and now I have literal every other Facebook ads for a bike of some sort from some company.
Here, you want a tip? Anytime that you're looking to buy something, the way that a lot of these retargeting platforms work is they will retarget you based on how far you've gone down the purchase journey. But if you haven't purchased, sometimes what they'll do is if you add to cart but you don't actually buy, maybe they'll show you a 30% off coupon the next day. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about something like that, add it to your cart and just leave it for a few days. And then see if you get a retargeted with a coupon later.
That's really good to know because we just bought a Peloton yesterday.
Next big purchase thing.
And it's so funny because I told my husband, I was like, yeah, there was those spin shoes I was looking at 18 months ago, and then they showed up in my Facebook feed. And I was like,
they get you.
You're listening to me. I didn't even know their name. But now, they're showing me camo shoes, and I'm it's like me.
I mean, it's funny. These platforms know a lot about you that you don't. They don't really know that they're tracking, or you don't even really know that you're doing a lot of times. Whereas you can be scrolling through your feed and just what you happen to watch that day, it keeps track of that. And then other things
slow down a little bit.
Exactly.
It's not because they heard you. It's because something you showed some kind of interest in something at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to click on something for it to be an engagement. Mm-hmm. They track views and how much time you spend on different posts. Then the other thing is when you're messaging with other people, they do parse that text and can track and make, they can evaluate what you're talking about, and then also who you're talking to, and then just who you're physically near, and what are the topics that you guys have in common. You might see ads based off that.
Yikes.
So yeah, these platforms are kind of creepy, but very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's very interesting because, like I said, a lot of the time it'll be something that I just thought about, but it's also probably because I saw it somewhere at some point and it kind of slowed down or whatever, or somebody mentioned it or whatever. So how does LinkedIn work if you have non-traditional job titles? If you have because I know that's kind of a it's kind of a new up and coming thing. So if you have a non-traditional job title, and maybe those are the people you kind of want to find as those non-traditional people.
Yeah.
How do you how do you kind of adjust that? Is it just businesses they work in? Is it known functions?
So people that say head ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading something and it was just chief of getting shit done or something was her title. And I was oh, I love those titles.
do you have a cool title?
I don't. Well, I don't, but I like to say, I always put abundant bean maker on mine.
I was gonna say top bean counter.
Yeah. I put abundant bean maker on mine, in our software, in our CRM and stuff, because I like to be a smartass. But in LinkedIn and stuff, it's very specific that I'm a CPA.
Yeah. So the two ways to do that is a lot of times LinkedIn guesses at similar ones. So they will a lot of times they'll guess at ones that are close to what you're putting in, mm-hmm. and there's always a little bit of variation there. But when you have something that's very different, that's more different, what we do is we use function and seniority to target those people. Whereas LinkedIn does some, analysis to say that they think that somebody's going to be in this category or that category. If they put in something that's like just off the wall kind of a title, then we don't have a great way to do that. But they're also like asking not to be targeted in that way too. So, but there's alternative ways that we can target them. So, if something's close, what we'll often do is we might use specific job titles in one campaign, and then in another one we would do it based off of function and seniority, because for the most part, like the options that most people have is job titles. So everyone who's not fit for that job title goes in this bigger cloud of function and seniority. But that means that there's less people competing for them because people aren't using the specific job titles that they have. So those are actually cheaper people to advertise to because less people are advertising to them. So.
Do people put their degrees in? Can you like target by degree?
Again, yeah.
That might be easier.
So we do degrees often. I'd say we most use those when we want to target like doctors or like lawyers, because people do change careers a lot. But
yeah,
I'd say most common is like targeting doctors or lawyers who use degrees.
Yeah. So in our niches, a lot of the time I get people that are other B2Bs in our niche, not as much like the direct person to talk to in the businesses. It's more like the partners.
Yeah.
In that niche. And LinkedIn's been amazing for that, but like to actually get to the dentists and veterinarians, like they're just not on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I've met a ton of people that work with those people, which has been awesome. But yeah, B2B, like to find actual veterinarians or I have a ton, but like most of them work not in the veterinarian, like in an actual hospital anymore. Right. Yeah. So I wonder if searching by degree would be helpful too. I just had that epiphany.
Yeah, and that is for a lot of ones. Other things that we can do is based off skills that they might have on their profile. That's a good one because people need to explicitly add skills to the profile, so that shows another level of like activity.
Engagement. Yeah.
And then groups that they're a part of, we'll use that a lot. So those are other good indicators of things that they're out there doing.
So what's most effective on LinkedIn? Because I feel like the feed in LinkedIn is just so different than like a Facebook feed or whatever. Like I always feel like I'm only getting like 1/10 of this stuff, which is probably true for Facebook too, but it's just less stuff.
What works well on LinkedIn is on the advertising side of things, we often use lead magnets in our campaign. So LinkedIn's a great lead generation channel. It's a great place to start the conversation. LinkedIn is a more expensive channel to use. Like they know they have this very valuable data of like job title and industry and company size that no one else has, so they charge you a premium for it. So what you want to do is you want to use LinkedIn to start the conversation and acquire those people, but then you probably want to nurture them and continue that conversation over other cheaper channels. So that's when we do still use Facebook at times, when we will do lead generation on LinkedIn and capture leads, capture traffic, and then retarget those people. And the best way after they've signed up for something is when you have their email, just send them an email so they can email. This is the best. But then people that have been to your site or people that have downloaded something, retarget them on Facebook, because number one, it's cheaper to retarget them on Facebook, and then number two, Facebook has a lower minimum to be able to start your retargeting. So on LinkedIn, it's at least 300 people in your audience size that you have to have before you can start retargeting ads. And on Facebook, it's just 100 people, so we can start retargeting faster on Facebook. So LinkedIn's where you get your quality traffic, your target based on job title and stuff. You get your quality traffic there, and then you retarget it via Facebook or email follow-ups afterwards.
It's really interesting because I know, a lot of people use LinkedIn for messaging. We send a lot of messages. That's, one of the things I've done. And it's been really, really effective. But I also know there's a lot of people that are like, why are you messaging me? Like, this isn't Facebook. Like, what are you doing? Because it's become more social.
We do a lot of LinkedIn messaging as well. And those are very effective campaigns. They're very effective because they're one-to-one, and it's a very, when you're messaging with somebody, you can learn a lot about them by going to their profile and learning more, assuming they have a good profile. So it's a very one-to-one personal kind of connection. And like any advertising campaign, what you're eventually looking for is for B2B, it's usually get somebody on the phone or have that one-to-one conversation. So LinkedIn messaging is great because you can jump right to having that one-to-one messaging conversation. You're just limited to the number of connection requests that you can send and hours you have in a day to do that. And then, there are a lot of bad ones out there. So whenever I talk to somebody, they're like, oh, those LinkedIn messages, like all that spam I get. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of bad ones out there, but it's all about, those few good ones that you do it right.
Do you guys use a tool for the messaging or do you guys do it by hand?
We use a tool for messaging.
Okay.
So we use a tool to start the conversation. And then when somebody responds, that's when we'll step in and manually, a human will handle that for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I use this system too, that I really love because it'll do all the follow-up messaging as well, like if they don't respond.
Yeah.
So it's nice because it's just like I have to set it and forget it until somebody responds.
Yeah. Wait, what did I say again?
Who are you? And why am I sending you messages? Oh, okay, this is fine. I love it. I think, what I found on LinkedIn is a lot of people are super responsive or they're just like, no thanks, which is fine. And I'm always just like, okay. Cool. Yeah. But I do find that it's more responsive and I'm more responsive on LinkedIn than I am in other places.
Yeah.
Like
if somebody sends me a message out of the blue on Facebook, I'm just like, who is this?
I'm always just like, please don't be a dick pic, please.
Yeah.
Which I've never gotten one.
Knock on wood, yeah.
But it's usually like, eek.
Yeah.
Can you preview it somehow without
when you get a connection request, you can at least see a little bit about them, where they work, what do they do. You can analyze is this a legit person? Did I accept it or not?
Yeah. And I think most people have done, especially on LinkedIn, especially if they're sending out connection requests, they've done a really good job in their profile, right? So even in the request, it says, kind of their one-liner in the top. So it's I get a lot of people that work with CPAs or, help them grow and whatever. I get a ton of those, but I always just say yes. Cause I'm just I don't know, maybe you'll share my stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
I always do that too. Cause I'm always I'm curious to see your sequence after this.
I am too. And then I'm always just what's happening next? Right. Cause I have my own sequence. So it's what do you have in yours?
So there's popcorn.
Yeah. Well, it's always cause it pops as soon as you say yes. The first message comes up always. And usually I'm just thanks for connecting. And then I move on with my life because I know that it stops the automatic messages if I respond.
You know how it works?
Yep. I do. So especially if it's something where I just I know I'm not interested, I will just respond real fast. Thanks for connecting. Cause then I know that I'll have to come back later.
Yeah.
It's kind of mean of me, but also kind of keeps my inbox to a minimum. It's pretty funny. So let's talk about how COVID-19 has changed marketing because, we're having this conversation with pretty much every industry, but what's changed, what's important to know, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah. From a high level, I'd say it's kind of just showing, it's just making digital that much more important right now. I'll tell you how many people I've talked to are just yeah, we usually go to this trade show every year. That's not happening. So we're putting that budget towards LinkedIn instead. We're seeing a lot more activity on the platform and a lot of activity from people that weren't traditionally active digitally. So we got a graph from our LinkedIn rep and it was activity on the platform since February. And it kind of looks exactly like you'd expect it to look of just as soon as COVID hit, traffic goes way up. And there's some numbers and it was 2017% increase. And you're what does that mean? But I mean, there's just a lot of people there now, a lot of activity on the platform, and it's kind of becoming the kind of go-to business community where, if we're not going to the office and we're not going to these different events, that's kind of where we're spending a lot more time now is places like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So, ways that marketing's changed, we kind of speak. We started by speaking to the COVID topics a lot. I'd say now the messaging that's kind of become now COVID messaging has kind of become noisy, or everyone started talking about it, and then just us as people we've heard a lot of it, so we're okay, I don't need to hear any more COVID stuff. So we started switching our messaging, a lot of our campaigns to other things, maybe planning next year, planning later this year. How are you going to reopen? How are you going to go back to the office? For a lot of our campaigns, is talking about that. Yeah, marketing itself, I'd say the campaigns are largely themselves very similar. The responses and conversion rates, we saw, when COVID hit, everyone kind of held their breath for a while. So you saw a lot of like purchasing stop and slow down, but people were just as active and just as signing up for things and looking for information. So if you're an advertiser, companies have still pulled back a lot of their big ad budgets. Like a lot of big companies have pulled back a lot of big ad budgets and stuff. So right now, if anything, the ad platform is less competitive because a lot of big budgets are still pulled back. So right now, LinkedIn ads are actually about 20 to 30% cheaper than they were pre-COVID, which is interesting. So, LinkedIn's a very expensive channel. If you can get in now and build your list for 20 to 30% cheaper than usual, that could be really valuable for you down the road. That's a hard decision for a lot of businesses to make, given everything that's going on. But if you're able to, you could get in a little bit cheaper. So a lot more activity. Marketing itself is about the same.
Yeah, somebody asked me like to look at my views on LinkedIn the other day, or like my profile views, and it just went whoop. But then it actually kind of went wrong. Because everybody was like, ours are all up. And I'm like, that's interesting. Let me see mine. No, mine went down.
It's because you responded to all the bots. They'll stop.
Well, I think it's just because, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows what happened. I'm not that worried about it because I still have a ton of them.
What are the pitches that you get as like a CPA? Do you get a lot of people pitching like marketing services to you, or?
Yeah, so I think the big ones are, and this has always been the case, but I get a lot of financial advisors, which I'm always just like, I don't know what y'all think I have over here, like just like holding it close to the vest or something. And I get a lot of podcast people at this point, like podcast like creators and stuff.
You must have podcast in your title somewhere.
Yes, I do. It's not in my title. It's in my, like the one-liner or whatever. And then I get a lot of, like people who serve accounting companies, businesses. So I get a lot of those too.
We provide X software for accountants or something.
Yeah. Or like we help, accountants grow or create leads or,
Yeah.
They're probably similar to what you guys do. But I get a lot of those.
Yeah. And about the title thing, that is something for people to note is like, think about so a lot of people do these messaging approaches and they search by title, keywords in your title or keywords in your profile. So if you do want to attract certain people, think about what they could be searching for to find you and reaching out to you. We have one guy who's an investor and he says he gets so much just organic people reaching out to him. Well, these messaging people are reaching out to him because he has investor in his title, and like stuff like that. We see that with real estate, investor, podcaster for sure. We see a lot of those people. Author is another one where we see a lot of people reaching out. Well, speaker, more like speakers. People are reaching out. So.
That's interesting. Is that a way to like know what people are Googling or know what people are searching for on LinkedIn? It's like a keyword.
Hard to analyze that. What you can do, you can size up an audience you can size up how many people have that title or that keyword, but it's not easy to see what other people are searching for.
I see what you're saying.
There's not a search volume graph. Sure.
See, I'm still learning about the marketing stuff.
It'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful, right?
Yeah.
What are people searching for? I get a lot of different things, but it also says dentist and veterinarian in my profile because that's who we work with. And I get a lot of like B2B or people who serve them as well as like us going out to find those people. Yeah. So it works for us, or at least, I think we get a ton more engagement on LinkedIn with the podcast than we ever have, on other platforms.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot less noise.
Yeah, podcasts are great. Like that's, you get a lot of traffic on there because of podcasts and people are out there. Right now is interesting because people aren't commuting as much. So I've heard listening is down, but I think overall just the podcasting trend is still increasing. It's not gonna stop.
Our listens have gone up since COVID. So we were really at that 750 a day and it just kind of stayed there, which this podcast is just like general business categories. So like those are really good numbers for for the category. But I think we're up at least 100 listens a day since COVID, and it kind of just went whoop.
Yeah.
But people were listening at different times than they generally did. So they're kind of like messing with like when it goes up. Like it always went up at the same time, but like when we were pushing it out, we were trying to like see when the engagement was happening.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of back to Tuesday mornings, but I don't know. I don't handle any of that stuff. I'm not messing with any of that. But I do know that, yeah, I do know that like we were just trying to optimize when people were actually listening.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because we saw our listens go up. I don't know. I think our YouTube doesn't do a whole lot. We try to get people to come watch, but I don't watch podcasts. So, like we do video too, but I only have a couple of people that have been like, yes, I watch it too. Okay, awesome. I think my mom watches it or something.
Whenever I post something on Facebook, either from myself or my company page, the first person to like it's my grandma.
Oh, okay.
She'll probably do this. Hey, Grandma.
Hi, Grandma. That's so funny. Yeah. I have a financial advisor that I work with really closely here locally, and he's like always the first one. Like he likes every single post, and I'm like, you're so cute.
He's getting the he's waiting for it to come out.
And my Uncle Brian, I was like, just call him Gilby. Like he's so cute. They're so cute. Okay. Before I ask the last question, what is the easiest way for people to find you?
On LinkedIn, I'm Lee Bletner on there. So look me up, send me a connection request, add some. I accept most connection requests for why we talked about, but add something in there just so I don't think you're gonna spam me too much. And then outside of LinkedIn, you can send me an email. My email is anthony@modernmedia.io, and then our website's modernmedia.io. There's a lot of LinkedIn tips and tricks on there.
Awesome. So what is the one thing a B2B business needs to do today to reach their intended audience better?
To reach their intended audience better, for most people I talk to, it's like you need to get on LinkedIn and start using that. I'd say that's like just to reach the audience, that's the number one thing. After that, the number one piece of advice I usually give people is you need to have some kind of lead magnet to offer to people in your target market. This is the biggest thing, the biggest shift for most people is when people come to your website or even your profile, you need to have something there that's going to grab their attention and give them a reason to sign up for something or give them a reason to connect with you. So a lot of times, most of our campaigns are lead magnet focused. So that's offering somebody a guide or a PDF. And there's a lot around the lead magnet strategy, but choose something that's a pain point for them, that's top of mind for them. Like for you, it might be the 5 biggest tax mistakes that companies make. Sign up here to download now.
Yeah.
Something like that. So the biggest thing for businesses is figure out, maybe have a few lead magnets and put together a good couple PDFs and then use those in your marketing.
Yeah. I keep overthinking that one.
And it can be simple, you do this day to day. What are the 3 to 5 things you most commonly talk about with people? And like even think about just like when somebody comes on new, what are the first 3 to 5 things you do with them? Put that into a checklist, and then that's your PDF that you do.
Yeah, right. I've got like 20 of them just like swimming around in this of mine right now.
You can make it industry specific or even job title specific. Are you working with a CFO or are you working with a business owner? Maybe they each have one. Maybe the veterinarian industry has one. The dentist industry has one.
Mm-hmm. I just need to sit down and Canva it out. Like it's literally just sitting in my head right now.
Yeah, Canva's a very good, easy tool. Google Docs is also pretty easy. Just put some content in there.
Oh yeah.
Polish it up a little bit and then
I made this whole PPP loan spreadsheet situation and it was like good to go and ready to go. And I did a Loom video and I just did everything for it. And then they changed all the guidance on it. And so I updated it all. And then I was like, you know what? Just kidding. Just kidding. I gave it to my clients, but I'm like, I can't put this out into the universe because it's changing too often.
Right.
And I want it to be solid guidance.
Right.
And I can't do that in this current situation.
Yeah. That was one of the best campaigns that we ran a couple months ago was when you're paying per click on LinkedIn, your eventual cost per lead is based on how many of those clicks actually sign up and submit.
Right.
So there was one of our clients was a CFO type of agency, and they released a PPP tip sheet for people.
Mm-hmm.
Document me, this is what you need to do. So put out this tip sheet, and like it was just like that was top of mind for people. I think their conversion rate was like 75%. Like basically everyone that clicks on it was like, yeah, I want that.
There's a CPA firm, and I literally only know about them now because they had a PPP versus EIDL chart on their website that was all over the internet. And it was gold. It was solid gold. And I think I could probably still type out their website address. It's like probably a medium-sized firm. I don't even know where they are. But they had this really great, PPP versus EIDL loan chart that they created and were updating and stuff. And I was like, that was just very, very, thank you.
Think about how many people probably downloaded that probably went viral,
Yeah.
Like something that's top of mind, a pain point and top of mind for your audience. And
well, I even link to it. Like I have it in my Facebook group. Like I send it to my clients. Like I've posted it a bunch of places because it was just a really good, solid, and like I think we were talking about before, like I'm always looking for resources from people who are smarter than me or like have done the, or we're going to do the work to update it really is what it comes down to, especially with this stuff. It's like, you made that commitment and you're going to continue to update it for me. I really appreciate you.
Especially in your category where like things like tax law changes often and it's really important sensitive information that you have the most up-to-date stuff.
Yeah, so. Especially with the PPP loan stuff. Like I get daily emails from some of my CP providers about like PPP loan changes and I just like delete them because I'm like, some point I have to go back to this, but not today.
I archive a lot of things. Archive. I'll get back to
yeah, no, I just delete it.
I'll snooze it in Gmail. I'll snooze it.
Oh yeah.
I use that probably too much. Where like every weekend I get like 30 things back in my inbox. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this next weekend.
I'm really bad at the snooze too. Usually it's bills that aren't due until like later in the month.
I'll get to that later.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like vendor bills, like people I directly work with, then I'll pay it. But if it's like, my insurance or whatever, then it just waits until it's time to pay it because I'm like cash flow, my friends. But yeah, then I'll snooze and I'll be like, oh, look at all those bills I forgot about. Or like I decided to put out of my mind. My productivity person, Stephen Crawford, would yell at me about that. He's like, add it to your to-do list. I was like, but then I have to remember to go to said to-do list. Right. So no. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.